Breaking. King Charles just interrupted a live parliamentary session, and what he said to Keir Starmer has Westminster in absolute meltdown. The Prime Minister stood frozen, unable to respond, while 200 MPs watched in stunned silence. Within minutes, 3 cabinet ministers walked out, and what happened in the next 60 seconds could end this government before the week is over. If you want to see how this constitutional crisis explodes, hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next will shock you to your core. Here's what sparked the most unprecedented royal intervention in modern British history. At precisely 2:17 p.m. today, Keir Starmer was addressing Parliament about his new housing bill. Standard procedure, routine business, ministers nodding, backbenchers checking their phones, the usual Westminster theatre. But then something happened that shattered 300 years of royal protocol. The Sergeant-at-Arms entered the chamber carrying the ceremonial black rod. Every MP in that room knew what that meant. The monarch was summoning Parliament, immediately. But Parliament was already in session. The King doesn't interrupt live proceedings, ever. MPs looked at each other in confusion. Starmer stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale. And within 90 seconds, the entire House of Commons was marching to the House of Lords in complete chaos. The scene inside the Lords' chamber was unlike anything witnesses have ever described. King Charles stood at the throne, but he wasn't wearing ceremonial robes. He was in a simple, dark suit. No crown, no regalia, just a man who looked absolutely exhausted. The Lord Speaker tried to begin the formal protocols, but Charles raised his hand. "That won't be necessary," he said quietly. His exact words were chilling. "I have watched this government, my government, drive Britain toward a precipice. I have stayed silent, as protocol demands. But when the Prime Minister announced yesterday his intention to override parliamentary conventions that have protected this nation since 1688, my silence would become complicity." The chamber erupted. Conservative MPs started shouting. Labour backbenchers looked horrified. Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle banged his gavel repeatedly, but nobody was listening. And Keir Starmer? Sources in the room say he stood completely frozen, his face drained of colour, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to process what was happening. The King of England had just accused him of constitutional vandalism in front of the entire British establishment. Within seconds, cameras captured what happened next. Transport Secretary Louise High stood up and walked straight out of the chamber. Then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper followed. Then Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. 3 cabinet ministers. Gone. In less than 2 minutes. The optics were devastating. But what nobody outside that chamber knows yet is what Charles said next. After the 3 ministers walked out, he continued speaking, and his voice grew stronger, more forceful. "I have received over 14,000 letters in the past month from British citizens expressing alarm at the direction of this government," he revealed. "These are not political activists. These are grandmothers from Cornwall, factory workers from Birmingham, teachers from Edinburgh. They are terrified that the country they love is being dismantled piece by piece." Constitutional experts watching on television called it nuclear. Professor Helena Wilkinson from Cambridge immediately went on BBC News. "The monarch just weaponized public opinion against the Prime Minister," she said, visibly shaken. "That's not constitutional monarchy. That's political warfare." And she was right. Because Charles wasn't finished, he pulled out a single sheet of paper from his jacket pocket. "This letter," he said, holding it up, "is from a 4-year-old Second World War veteran named Albert Hughes from Cardiff. Mr. Hughes stormed the beaches of Normandy in 1944. He liberated concentration camps. He helped rebuild Europe. And last month, he was told his council flat is being converted to asylum seeker accommodation, and he has 6 weeks to leave." You could hear gasps echo through the chamber. Charles continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Mr. Hughes wrote to me asking if this is what he fought for. I have no answer for him. But I know this. A government that treats its heroes with such contempt does not deserve to govern." The silence that followed was deafening. MPs from both sides sat stunned. Even hardened Labour loyalists looked visibly shaken. Meanwhile, British veterans who fought in the Falklands, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, men and women who served their country with dignity and honour, are now living in their cars. David Morrison, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran from Portsmouth, was found last week sleeping under a bridge, wearing his service medals on his chest. He told reporters he wanted people to remember he once mattered. "I defended this country," he said through tears. "Now my country won't defend me." While David sleeps rough, Parliament just approved £8 billion in foreign aid increases. We're talking luxury accommodations for asylum seekers in 4-star hotels. We're talking translation services in 47 languages. We're talking legal aid packages that cost more than most British families earn in 5 years. The contrast is so brutal, so morally bankrupt, that even lifelong Labour voters are turning away in disgust. Margaret Bennett, a 9-year-old grandmother from Sheffield who voted Labour for 50 years, recorded a tearful video that's now gone viral. "I believed in this party," she said. "I believed they cared about people like me. But when they ignore our veterans and roll out red carpets for people who've never contributed a penny, I can't support that anymore. I just can't." That video hit 1.8 million views in 6 hours. The comments section is filled with thousands of stories just like hers. Working-class Britons who feel abandoned by the very party that claimed to represent them. And here's what makes this even worse. While veterans like David Morrison sleep rough, leaked documents reveal that the Home Office spent £127 million last year on hotel accommodations alone for asylum seekers. That's £348,000 every single day. Meanwhile, the Royal British Legion reports that over 6,000 veterans are currently homeless across the UK. The government's own figures show that veterans wait an average of 14 months for mental health treatment through the NHS. 14 months. But asylum seekers receive immediate healthcare, immediate housing, immediate financial support. Janet Williams, a 8-year-old nurse from Leeds whose father served in the Royal Navy for 30 years, told The Telegraph, "My dad can't get a hip replacement, but we're funding luxury hotel stays for people who arrived last week. Where's the justice in that?" Her interview was shared 450,000 times on Facebook. The anger isn't coming from the far right. It's coming from ordinary British families who feel like strangers in their own country. The polls confirm the catastrophe. A Snap survey conducted 2 hours after the King's intervention showed Labour's support collapse from 38% to 24% in a single afternoon. In traditional Labour strongholds, Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, the numbers are even worse. Some constituencies are showing 20-point drops. This isn't a polling error. This is a political earthquake in real time. But then, something even more unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. After the 3 cabinet ministers walked out, King Charles did something no British monarch has done in living memory. He referenced a specific government policy by name. The Levelling Down Britain Act, he said with barely concealed contempt, is perhaps the most Orwellian piece of legislation I have encountered in my lifetime. It claims to empower local communities while stripping them of autonomy. It promises prosperity while guaranteeing dependence. And it was pushed through Parliament with a speed that suggests the government hoped nobody would read it. Palace insiders reveal that Charles spent 3 weeks reviewing that legislation line by line. He consulted constitutional scholars from Oxford and Cambridge. He met privately with former prime ministers from both parties, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, even Theresa May. All of them warned him that Starmer's bill would fundamentally alter the balance between Westminster and the Crown. The King was furious, sources say, but he held his tongue for as long as he could. Until yesterday, when Starmer announced plans to fast-track the bill through the Lords using emergency procedures, Charles had seen enough. At 7:30 p.m. last night, he summoned his private secretary and dictated the speech he would deliver to Parliament. For 2 hours, aides tried to talk him out of it. "Your Majesty," one reportedly pleaded, "this will destroy your relationship with the government." Charles looked him straight in the eye. "Then let it be destroyed," he said. "I will not watch this country fall into constitutional chaos while I play dress-up in a palace." What happened in the 48 hours before this intervention reveals just how deep the crisis really goes. Sources close to Buckingham Palace confirm that on Sunday evening, Charles held a secret meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. The meeting lasted nearly 4 hours. What was discussed officially remains confidential. But one palace aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that the Archbishop warned Charles he was risking everything. "Your Majesty," Welby reportedly said, "if you do this, you may save the country, but you could destroy the Crown." Charles's response was immediate and unwavering. "The Crown is nothing if it cannot protect the people it serves." Those words are now legendary within palace circles. They reveal a king who understands that constitutional monarchy survives not through power, but through moral authority. And Starmer's government just lost all moral authority. The optics of what happened next are absolutely devastating for Starmer. Because while Charles was preparing to defend British traditions, Starmer was reportedly mocking him behind closed doors. A leaked recording from a private Labour fundraiser on Saturday night captures the Prime Minister's voice clearly. Charles thinks he's still relevant. Starmer can be heard saying to laughter from donors, "Someone needs to remind him it's 2025, not 1925. The crown is a relic. We're just too polite to say it publicly." When that audio leaked at 6 p.m. today, just 3 hours after the King's intervention, social media exploded. The hashtag Starmer insults King hit #1 within 20 minutes. Even staunch Republicans were horrified by the disrespect. The timing couldn't have been worse for Starmer. It proved Charles right. The immediate market reaction was swift and brutal. Within 30 minutes of the King's speech, the pound dropped 3.2% against the dollar. £4.7 billion was wiped from London's FTSE 100 inches a single trading session. International investors don't care about British constitutional drama, but they care deeply about political stability. And stability just evaporated. Currency traders in Hong Kong, Singapore, and New York began shorting the pound at levels not seen since the Liz Truss mini-budget disaster. Goldman Sachs issued a note to clients at 4:15 p.m. London time. UK political risk now comparable to emerging markets. Recommend defensive positioning. Deutsche Bank went further, suggesting clients reduce UK exposure by 30%. The financial consequences are staggering. Britain's cost of borrowing just increased. That means higher mortgage rates for ordinary families, higher business loan rates for small companies, higher costs for government debt. Chancellor Rachel Reeves watched £4.7 billion disappear in real time, and she knows the next few days could see billions more evaporate. The Conservative Party, sensing blood in the water, immediately tabled a vote of no confidence. Rishi Sunak, who's been relatively quiet for months, emerged with a speech that cut straight to the bone. When the King of England feels compelled to intervene because Parliament has lost its way, Sunak declared, "That's not a constitutional crisis, that's a failure of leadership." Standing ovation from Tory MPs. Deafening silence from Labour benches. Social media erupted like nothing political analysts have ever witnessed. The hashtag King Charles Speaks hit #1 globally within 40 minutes, trending in 73 countries. British Twitter became a war zone. Monarchists celebrated. Republicans attacked. But the truly shocking development was how many traditional Labour voters sided with the King. Twitter user at Working Class Nan, a self-described lifelong socialist, posted, "Never thought I'd say this, but the King just showed more backbone than our entire government. Maybe we've been backing the wrong horse." That tweet got 340,000 likes. TikTok videos defending Charles went viral by the hundreds. A 22-year-old university student from Manchester posted a tearful video explaining why she's abandoning Labour after today. "I thought I was progressive," she said, "but watching the King defend our values while Starmer tears them down, I was wrong about everything." That video hit 2.7 million views in 5 hours. The comment section is filled with thousands of young people having the same revelation. The Labour Party just lost an entire generation in a single afternoon. International reactions poured in throughout the afternoon. Canadian Prime Minister expressed support for constitutional monarchy and traditional parliamentary procedures, a clear shot at Starmer. In Australia, opposition leaders called for renewed respect for Westminster traditions. Even French President Macron, no friend of monarchy, issued a statement praising institutional stability. But the most damaging response came from the United States. The White House released a carefully worded statement at 11:30 a.m. Washington time. The United States values its special relationship with the United Kingdom and hopes for swift resolution to current political uncertainty. That phrase, political uncertainty, is diplomatic code for disaster. American investors read that statement and immediately started pulling money out of UK markets. Britain wasn't just facing a domestic crisis anymore. The world was watching Britain tear itself apart on the global stage. Inside #10, witnesses describe absolute pandemonium. Starmer called an emergency cabinet meeting for 4 p.m., but only 11 of 22 ministers showed up. The rest either resigned, refused to attend, or claimed scheduling conflicts. Cowards hiding while the ship sank. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, was absent. Her office claimed she was dealing with a family emergency. Nobody believed it. She was meeting with backbench MPs, sources confirm, gauging support for a leadership challenge. One Labour MP who attended those meetings described the atmosphere as a coup in slow motion. Rayner allegedly told them, "Starmer is finished. The question is whether we all go down with him or whether we act now to save the party." That's not the language of a loyal deputy. That's the language of a challenger preparing her move. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, did attend the cabinet meeting but spent the entire meeting on her phone. When Starmer demanded her attention, she looked up and said coldly, "I'm dealing with the economic crisis you just created." The room went silent. One minister later described it as the moment everyone realized Starmer had lost control completely. Even his closest allies were turning on him. Junior ministers were overheard in Westminster corridors discussing succession plans. WhatsApp groups with names like Real Labour and Future Forward were plotting Starmer's removal in real time. The messages are brutal. One MP wrote, "He's finished. The king destroyed him. We need to move fast before we all go down with him." Another responded, "Rayner or Reeves." A third chimed in, "Anyone but Starmer." But here's where it gets really interesting. Screenshots from these WhatsApp groups, leaked to the Sun newspaper, reveal that some Labour MPs aren't just plotting to replace Starmer. They're discussing forming a completely new party. One message reads, "Labour is dead. The brand is toxic. We need to start fresh with a new name, new leadership, new values." Another MP responds, "Call it British Workers' Party. Go after Reform UK voters. This isn't just a leadership challenge anymore. This is a potential party split that could reshape British politics forever." The question isn't if they'll move against him, it's when. Veteran Labour MP Barry Gardiner didn't hold back. "In 30 years in Parliament," he told Sky News, "I've never seen a Prime Minister lose control this quickly." The King didn't just criticise policy. He questioned Starmer's judgment, his integrity, his fitness to lead. That's career-ending. Starmer looked broken, sources say, pacing number 10 like a caged animal, snapping at aides, refusing phone calls. One aide who spoke to The Times described the Prime Minister as unrecognisable, paranoid, convinced everyone is plotting against him. Another said, "He's lost in conspiracy theories, blaming the palace, blaming the media, blaming everyone except himself." The man who promised stability and competence now appears completely out of his depth. But here's the revelation that could bring down the entire government. Leaked documents obtained by The Telegraph show that Starmer's team knew for 3 weeks that the King opposed the Levelling Down Britain Act. Palace officials sent multiple warnings to Downing Street, formal letters, private meetings, even a personal message from Charles to Starmer. The government ignored every single one. If these documents are real, and multiple sources confirm they are, then Starmer didn't just miscalculate, he deliberately provoked this crisis. Think about what that means. The Prime Minister received direct warnings from the monarch that certain legislation crossed constitutional red lines. He pushed ahead anyway, gambling that Charles wouldn't dare intervene publicly. That gamble just cost him his government. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating. It means Starmer didn't respect the Crown. He didn't respect Parliament. He didn't even respect the constitutional framework that holds Britain together. He thought he could bully his way through, and now he's paying the price. One leaked message from a senior Downing Street aide reads, "PM believes King is bluffing. Push through before he can react." That message was sent 48 hours before today's intervention. They knew, they gambled, they lost. And wait, because there's another layer to this that makes everything even worse. Those same leaked documents reveal that Starmer's advisors conducted private polling 3 weeks ago, specifically asking whether voters would support the government if the King publicly opposed them. The results were catastrophic. 67% said they would side with the King. Only 18% said they would support the government. Starmer saw those numbers and pushed ahead anyway. He was warned by his own data that this would be political suicide. He did it anyway out of pure arrogance. Think about the implications. The Prime Minister had concrete evidence that confronting the King would destroy his government. He ignored that evidence because he believed he was untouchable. Now he's facing a vote of no confidence, mass resignations, and polls showing his party in freefall. This isn't incompetence anymore. This is political suicide by choice. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is capitalising on the chaos with surgical precision. While Labour implodes and Conservatives scramble, Farage stood before a sea of Union Jacks in Clacton and delivered the speech of his political life. "The King reminded us today what real leadership looks like," Farage declared. "While politicians play games, he stood up for British values, British traditions, and British sovereignty. That's what Reform UK has been saying for years. And today, the King proved us right. The crowd erupted in applause. The timing was perfect. The message was devastating. Reform UK doesn't look like a protest party anymore. They look like the only party defending Britain's constitutional heritage. For the first time in modern polling history, Reform UK hit 28% support. Conservatives are at 31%. Labour has cratered to 23%. A three-way race, a fractured nation, and a political revolution that nobody predicted. Farage isn't just rising in the polls. He's becoming a legitimate alternative to power. Donations flooded Reform UK headquarters all afternoon. Membership applications crashed their website twice. Former Conservative and Labour voters are switching allegiances in record numbers. Social media footage shows packed Reform UK rallies across the country. These aren't angry protests. They're celebrations. People waving flags, singing the national anthem, chanting Farage's name like he's already Prime Minister. The establishment dismissed him for years as a fringe figure. Today, he looks like the future. But Farage isn't just capitalising on the chaos. He's actively making it worse for Starmer. At 6:30 p.m. tonight, he announced he's filing a formal complaint with the Parliamentary Standards Committee, alleging that Starmer committed contempt of Parliament by ignoring royal advice. Legal experts say the complaint is unlikely to succeed, but that's not the point. The point is keeping the story alive, keeping Starmer on defence, keeping the crisis in the headlines day after day, and it's working brilliantly. Every news channel is now discussing whether a Prime Minister can be held in contempt for disrespecting the monarch. Constitutional scholars are debating precedents from the 17th century. Meanwhile, Starmer is paralysed, unable to govern, unable to move forward, unable to escape the crisis he created. Reform UK isn't just winning the argument, they're controlling the entire narrative. The next 72 hours will determine Britain's political destiny. Emergency parliamentary sessions are scheduled. Labour MPs are plotting succession. The Conservative Party is preparing a vote of no confidence. King Charles remains silent, but palace sources hint at further interventions if the government doesn't change course. One source told the Daily Mail, His Majesty has said privately that he will not allow Parliament to destroy 300 years of constitutional balance without a fight. Today was just the opening salvo. That language is unprecedented. The Crown doesn't fight. It reigns. But Charles is signalling he's prepared to go further if necessary. What could that mean? Some constitutional experts speculate he could refuse royal assent to future legislation. Others suggest he might dissolve Parliament and force a general election. Both options are nuclear. Both would fundamentally change how Britain is governed. But if Starmer keeps pushing, Charles might have no choice. The British Constitution, unwritten and flexible for centuries, is now being tested like never before. Can Parliament continue when the monarch has publicly condemned the Prime Minister? Can Labour survive with a leader who's lost the confidence of the Crown, his cabinet, and increasingly, his own MPs? Can Britain avoid a snap election that would almost certainly hand power to a coalition nobody wants? This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment modern Britain fractured. At its epicentre stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly isolated, increasingly desperate, and increasingly finished. Not since Edward Heath faced the miners' strike has a Prime Minister appeared so powerless in the face of institutional rebellion. History is being written today, and Starmer is on the wrong side of it. So here's the question that matters right now. Does Keir Starmer survive this constitutional earthquake, or is his government finished before Christmas? Did King Charles just save British democracy, or did he destroy the monarchy's political neutrality forever? And could Nigel Farage actually become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? What do you think happens next? Will Labour MPs move against Starmer this week, or will they wait until after the vote of no confidence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because we read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Westminster right now. The mainstream media is spinning this 6 different ways, but we're giving you the unfiltered truth. Hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we're breaking down the leaked WhatsApp messages that prove Labour ministers have been plotting against Starmer for weeks. This story is far from over. The next chapter could change Britain forever.